Hi guys, welcome back to the first panel of the afternoon slot. Okay, let's give a few minutes for people to tune in to the session. Our panelists are all ready and raring to go. All right, let's see. Okay, the numbers are going up. Okay guys, so for those of you who have joined in, welcome to panel session 4. It's on the future of the Malaysian startup ecosystem. And I believe we brought in some big guns today to discuss about the future of our startup ecosystem. And for those of you who are watching, you do have the chat feature on the side where you can put your comments there. And we also have the Q&A. So I will take questions through the Q&A tab. So if you have any questions for the panelists while we are doing the discussion, just key in your questions under the Q&A tab, and I will pick some interesting questions to pose to the panelists. Right? Okay, so with that, I think we can begin now. So I'm going to start with the introductions. On my screen, I see Mr. Gopi here from Mdh. I mean, you guys, I'm sure you all know him. You're in the ecosystem. I don't even have to introduce him. If you guys don't know him, I think then you're doing something wrong. And then we have Ms. Rafiza Ghazali here from Cradle, also another big one. You all should know her by now. And we have Victor Chua here from Vynn Capital. He's leading the way in the funding ecosystem side, and he's been doing a lot of great stuff in our ecosystem for a while now. Of course, you guys may also know him from Gopi Ventures, Gopi Partners, right? Before he set up his own Vynn Capital. And then on the final panelist, we have Sarma here. So, and you guys should know him very well. Actually, recently he's been out a lot in the media. You see him a lot. Every time something happens, you see Sarma has something to say. So you have definitely seen him a lot.
Been a bit noisy lately.
Yeah, so Aaron is, of course, a startup founder, and then he was with Mdh for a while, right, Aaron?
Yep.
Yes, and now with ScaleUp Malaysia, doing lots of ecosystem building work as well, right? So definitely an interesting panel I have today. So before we begin, I'm just going to throw some general questions, right, just to warm up the panel. Let's see who can take this question, right? So the Malaysia Digital Economy Blueprint, that's the buzz now. The aim is to create 5,000 startups in Malaysia, and of course attract 2 unicorns. So I think it could be local or foreign unicorns to come here, right? So is this the blueprint for our startup ecosystem now, or is something else for us? Who wants to take this question? Or do you think this is the blueprint that we all should follow from now onwards?
Sure, I can take a shot at it since it says Digital Economy Blueprint. So, I mean, if you read the document, it's pretty long, but if you actually look at it, you take a step back and you look at it, it's all about infrastructure, it's about connectivity, it's about having internet access with speed. The second portion, it's about businesses, right? It's about companies, because it's about building companies, because more the merrier, bigger the better. Why? Because there are 6 points in the blueprint under business, which talks about 30% is the uplift in productivity across all sectors. It's about getting to 22.6% of for the digital economy to contribute to Malaysia's GDP. It's about 875,000 micro, small, and medium-sized SMEs to e-commerce. It's about attracting 2 unicorns. It's 70 billion ringgit in investments in digitization, and it is to increase the number of startups to 5,000. So those are the headline bullet points. And can I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you take a step back, is this at all? I don't think so. If you take a step back and look at our ecosystem 8 years ago when we lost Grab, I think that was a wake-up call for Malaysia, for the ecosystem. We were all working at ICT, we were moving. I think the platform economy was coming in, and we didn't realize. So we didn't know how to handle Grab, and that was a wake-up call when Grab left for Singapore. And that is when all of us, all the agencies, Magic, Cradle, Mvca, Mdh, we started looking at our own ecosystems and what the relevance was and how they now step up the game. So I can talk on behalf of Mdh. And in Mdh, what we did in the last 5 years is we realized startups are very, very important. Why? Because startups is the fuel that creates the scale-up, and the scale-ups are the fuel that create job opportunities, exports. So we created a couple of initiatives like the Mdh, Malaysia Digital Hub Initiative. What is an Mdh initiative? We realize ecosystems are about people, it's about companies, it's about entrepreneurship, it's about money in the system. And that's exactly what an Mdh does. It's a co-working space with all these elements just there, right? And we have 20 of these MDHs in Klang Valley. We have one in Penang, so that's 21. We're looking at creating these digital hubs across Malaysia. Kuching, Kota Kinabalu, Johor, Ipoh. Why? Because these MDHs are already fully populated. They are already attracting, they're the pots for innovation, they're the honeypots for entrepreneurship, they're honeypots for startups, and that's one way of creating more startups, to get into these honeypots. So to attach that 5,000 number to these startups, and this is just MDH, you've got Cradle, you've got Magic. If you take all these agencies that are helping to build the ecosystem, I think 5,000 is a fair number to ask for. We spoke about two unicorns. I think I really believe if we didn't have the COVID-19 in 2020, we would be announcing one this year. But I think that's going to be deferred to next year. Two is definitely doable. We spoke about job creation. So it's a funding. It's about upskilling. So these are all initiatives under our Mdh blueprint to address the My Digital Initiative.
All right. Okay, Aaron, you have any thoughts on blueprint, just generally?
I've got a few maybe. So I think just specific to the idea of the startup ecosystem, the blueprint actually, as Gopi said, is quite a large document, 100 plus pages, and it covers all segments of the digital economy, right? When it comes to startups, it actually focuses on just the two metrics that it refers to, which is the in some parts of the document, it refers to the creation of 5,000 startups. In another part of the document, it says to increase to 5,000 startups. It's a little bit inconsistent in the document itself. But let's just assume that it's right. I think that's an interesting metric to have. Whether or not we do have 5,000 startups today, or what the actual number is today, is actually a kind of a question mark as well. And I think we should have a conversation about how many companies we already have today. I also wonder whether or not 1,000 startups is achievable, or is it too achievable? And should we be stretching a bit more and being a bit more ambitious with that number, right? Because just as a benchmark, South Korea, which is a very similar market in terms of population size to us, reports to have 30,000 startups in South Korea. So I'm not saying that maybe the definitions are the same, but I'm saying that maybe we should see if that's really a good number. And as Gopi rightly put, right, we actually have some really, really good startups in Malaysia today. I can also think of one of the guys who could be classified as a unicorn over the next 24 months or so. So is the goal of having 2 unicorns by 2025 too humble? Because we're just like going to coast there. Meaning to say basically what Gopi was saying just now, that if we didn't do anything, we'd hit the goal anyway. Which to me, as a founder, a former founder, you need to stretch, and maybe there's a need to have like a goal that's ambitious, and maybe we won't hit it. But I think if we have something as ambitious, it's something to rally around. We'll put the resource together, and maybe that's how we do. So my general view on what's happened with My Digital is that I think some of these goals could be a bit more ambitious within a shorter frame, and maybe it'll be something that's a bit more of a rallying cry. But right now, the feeling I get is that we probably will coast and achieve it regardless.
Actually, that's very related to another general question I have, right? Because when
before you go there, can I add? Can I contribute to the conversation?
And then I will let you comment on that.
Yes, it is related. It is related. I want to add to, look, I'm all in support with the digital blueprint, and I think we are in the right direction. But I think the conversation that we need to have, can we support 5,000 startups? Like what Aaron said, is it too small or is it too little? My concern is that, are we creating startups just for the sake of creating startups? Are there demand for the services or the products of the startups? The reason why I want to ask that is because, our grant recipients, which we approved before the pandemic, majority of them were not able to reach their milestones. As just to share with you, the way how Cradle disperse funds is they have to meet a certain milestone. So i.e. X number of subscriptions, X of partners or whatever. Majority of them were not able to meet the milestones. Now, it all depends on how fast we can recover. So how fast the purchasing power of the Malaysians that can actually make use or provide revenue to these startups. I think that's because we don't want to create 5,000 startups and they're all bleeding. That's the last thing that we want to do, because we are pulling resources where the impact is not value accretion. So I think what like what you said, the question is this enough? It is, I would say that it's probably, a half part of it. A half part of it's beyond our control, but we need to make sure that we have the people, the businesses, the corporates that actually utilize the startup. And that's one of the reasons why at Cradle we were pushing, we did a program last year, My Hackathon, because we want to make sure that our startups are actually being able to service the government, and instead of getting foreign vendors to come and service the government, we need to make sure that we really make full use and develops our local startups. So I think that's a conversation that we probably need to have sometime. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Okay, so the connected question was, when we listen to a lot of talks and speeches around Malaysia, right? We keep hearing different numbers, right? Some people say we have 1,500 startups in Malaysia. Some say we have 3,000 startups in Malaysia. So it seems to be very inconsistent, because if you have 3,000 now, hitting 5,000 a no-brainer, right? But if let's say we only have 500, then hitting 5,000 is quite it'll be an impossible feat, within even the next 5 years, because if all the work we've put in the last 20 years, we only have 500, right? So anyone here has a clearer picture on ecosystem? Like, what is the ecosystem like right now? Is there a proper number we have?
Can I comment? So
Yeah, sure.
we spoke about the digital hub. The reason why we introduced the digital hub, besides the point that those are the elements that create startups and scale them up, is MDEC needed a touch point. So it's a private-public partnership where the digital hubs are owned and operated by private enterprises, but MDEC comes to give them the support. And in these digital hubs, the 21 of the digital hubs, we have almost 800 hubs. Right, so MDEC is touching 800 startups via the digital hub. So that's one point, or rather one data that we have that we know it's real, right? But I'm sure Cradle's also touching startups. They may not be unique, maybe the same startup they're touching. I'm sure Magic is touching startups. But so that's where we need to come together, and we are. Besides knowing Rafiza and Zulira personally, we are working together. And we need to create this directory. We need to create this one standard where all the companies are all listed in that one stop, whatever app or center or a website or what. So we can take account. But we have started. We are touching about 800 startups. That's a number you can look at, Inbar.
So, with this blueprint and this aim of 5,000, right? Do you think there will be an agency in charge of creating maybe a standardized ecosystem map so that we all can refer to? Is that something in the pipelines?
If I can share with you that the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, MOSTI, and we're under MOSTI, right? We are attempting to have a whole ecosystem database, but it's not as simple as it sounds, even though they have a lot of agencies that touch the startups. Because what we found is that there are a number of startups that did not touch any of us. They are able to be there without any Malaysian funding. They've got angels and they've got foreign funders. So it's very difficult. It's almost impossible, I would think, to capture everything. But having 80% of the data, which we felt that would be ideal, that would be fantastic. Then, but and some of it there's duplication, incompleteness or whatever. But we are starting. And I know there are a number of other private initiatives as well to capture the data. So it's just a matter of everyone talking to each other. And Gopi is right, even though there are a number of agencies that are under different ministries, anyone that has a startup, even SME Corp, we are working together. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the interesting things I saw under the My Digital Blueprint, right? I'm really hoping all the agencies can come together under this blueprint. So maybe work together more closely so we can, collect all this data together so we have a better ecosystem map.
I think it's interesting. We've got two agencies on the panel, right? And we still don't have the actual number yet because we don't know. So so I've heard the 3,000 number.
But do we need to know? Do we really need to know? Do we really need the number?
Actually,
it'd be good to know, I guess.
It's nice to know, but the amount of effort to do that, it is like even with our grant companies, we've funded over 900, close to 1,000. Yeah, we know startups. They don't even keep data for their own, utilization, let alone to pass the numbers to us. They have any obligation.
Actually, Rafiza, I completely agree with you. There's actually no need to know the number, except that the blueprint seems to say that we're going to have that 5,000
Yeah,
startups.
I know.
It begs the question, where are we
Good
today?
luck to getting the numbers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, guys. So
if I may add just a few of my opinion. Sorry, Imba. So a few things. First of all, with regards to the blueprint, right, I think it's a little bit risky to focus on 5,000 and 2 unicorns. I think this is not the first time I'm saying it in the public, but I don't really believe in the concept of unicorn. So what is unicorn if you can't really grow successful businesses? Which is why the point earlier where Rafiza mentioned about having successful cases. I mean that is more important. And I believe the numbers that we're about, it's not so much about knowing just because it's good to know, but it's also a good metric to showcase to foreign investors. Because ultimately, I know that you're going to ask about funding situation in Malaysia. We don't have enough local funding. That's where, local funders are not funding local companies. Local funders are not funding local VCs. Local funders are not funding local PE firms as well. So we have to rely on foreign capital to support the Malaysian ecosystem. And in that case, those numbers with certain accuracy is good for us to actually use to showcase Malaysia's strength. One of the lousiest aspect of Malaysia is that we suck in marketing. We are very bad in storytelling. We are very bad in telling the Malaysian story. Unlike our peers from Singapore, unlike our peers from Korea right now as well. Dude, Korea even has a Netflix show on startups to showcase their strength. What do Malaysia have? We only have which is now also a Singapore stuff. So at the end of the day, we as Malaysians to step up when it comes to propagating the right messaging. That's why knowing those numbers are good, but having been overly focusing on those numbers is actually bad, because you're not going to focus on the execution.
Yeah.
Go ahead, ladies first.
No, I want to give you an example. So I always look at TechCrunch top 20 startups to watch for, and then they will say, okay, who are the 20 startups and then where they're from. I'm never interested to know, how many startups the Vietnam has or how many startups each country has. But what I'm more interested, wow, these startups came from these countries, So that's what, like I said, it's nice to have 5,000 startups, but does it warrant all the focus just to find out the number,
Actually,
so
do we have
would you think that maybe it would have been better if the blueprint said we should have 100 startups in Malaysia who have raised a certain amount of money?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, maybe that would,
So that's where I'm going to come in just now. I need 5 minutes for this because it's very important. All of you need
5 minutes, Gopi.
Yeah. Okay, 3 minutes. I'll cut down.
Okay, go ahead.
This startup ecosystem has evolved, right? The last 8 years, I think it's evolved. You can see the speed of the startups now. Look at Aaron to go very far. Look at Aaron himself. We met
grant recipient of Cradle.
Former
That's
grant
right.
of Cradle. He's an Mdh program.
Mdh game company, let's go for it.
Aaron identified touristly, right? And Mdh was working with Tony Fernandez on Pitch at Palace, funneled the company. Aaron did a good job in pitching.
We should tell him.
Tony invested 50% into his company. Then he became part of AI Asian. Then he exited. That took 4 years. It's how fast the ecosystem is working today. You're not only looking at Aaron, but you're looking at companies like Kasab, you're looking at iFlix, you're looking at Aerodyne. They're all going into Series D, C and D, right? On the game portfolio alone, from 2015 to now, to 2020, the game companies raised 1.7 billion ringgit. It's not small, huh? 1.7 billion. And 95% of the money is coming from foreign equity players, foreign VCs. So we have a lot of need to improve the way we invest in our companies. When we say we, it's not just the local VCs, the angels, the GLICs, the government-linked companies, Quap, Khazanah, PB. They have money and they're investing. But I think there has to be appetite to invest in our own local companies as well. Because the foreigners are investing, right? The second point that Victor you brought up, the number of companies, is it important to have unicorns? I personally believe it's important to have bigger companies rather than unicorns. Why? Because it's about job creation, it's about innovation, it's about scaling up, it's about exports, it's about getting money into the system. And you have these big companies, money will chase you. So I would probably prefer to, and it's a personal opinion, I don't know what the other ecosystem players are thinking about, is to create bigger companies. Whether they're unicorn or not, so be it. And the ecosystem, JF from Startup Journal commented 2-3 months ago, which I didn't see his point until when he commented it. He said, Grab is a Malaysian startup company, unicorn. I said, why? Because Grab was born out of the Malaysian startup ecosystem and not Singapore. Because it was here, we didn't know how to address scaling up at that time. So they moved, but it was born out of Malaysia. It was born out of KL. So that is the ecosystem that's evolving and where it is today. So yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do, but I don't think they're starting from ground zero, because Startup Genome has ranked us number 11 in the emerging ecosystems globally. So we have got some tailwind. So yeah, let's work hard. Sorry, I have to tell my 5 minutes worth.
I was at one of the first demos of my taxi. So when now people tell me Grab is a Singapore company, it kind of hurts a bit, Because when I travel in the region, right, whether when you go to Taiwan, Korea, and all that, people recognize Grab. And they go like, oh, Grab, the unicorn from Singapore. I'm like, Okay, but that aside, now that we've warmed up a bit, I have a specific question for Victor, right? So Victor, you've been in the funding ecosystem for a long time now. So one for you. How do you see the funding ecosystem in Malaysia within the next 5 years? And I'm sure a lot of things change now because of the COVID situation and all that. But do you think we can still compete with like other emerging, ecosystems? Like, I mean, Singapore is quite established, but I think Vietnam and Indonesia are growing really fast. How competitive are we, and where do you think we can get in the next 5 years?
Honestly, I'm not very optimistic with the Malaysian ecosystem. Like what I mentioned before, local funders are not funding local companies. They would rather put money outside. And one of the key elements of the any startup ecosystem is the maturity of the VC landscape. Within Malaysia itself, we have not seen much growth in pool. Most of the investors that we see are from overseas. To draw on one of our portfolio companies, Gopi. In the most recent round that they did after Y Combinator came in, most of the investors were from foreigners. We were probably the only we are the only local VCs that has invested into that company. And whatever it is, I think it's much easier, and it seems like it's much more exciting for the foreigners right now to want to invest into Gopi. So in essence, I think that's going to be the future for the startup ecosystem in Malaysia. A lot of the funding would come from overseas. VCs, unfortunately, in Malaysia, we are not seeing much of an uptake, simply because I don't think there is sufficient developmental role that's being played by the government or anyone to actually spur growth. In any case, I think somehow, like Indonesia and Vietnam, they always try to ensure that the local investors get a piece of the local growth company, which is why to Vietnam had, over the last 12 months alone, there's been at least 5 or 10 VCs that's been created by private sector, not by the government. These are all privately driven VC initiatives. And whereas Malaysia itself, yes, we see a lot of the new setup coming out because of certain government initiatives. But again, that is done, to me, with a good intention, but not enough thoughts around how do you ensure that it's sustainable. For any investors, if there's not enough local money, eventually they're just going to leave, because there's no one who's going to give them the capital to support the local ecosystem. So when the government stop funding these foreigners, then they're going to leave. So what's left are just local setup that's been used and done with, and there's no plans on succession planning. So I think overall, I'm not very optimistic, but at least we do see certain companies in Malaysia that are becoming more successful. Hopefully, guys like Gopi, etc., they could make the Malaysian ecosystem proud, and that would attract a lot more investors to come in. So essentially, I think even for local VCs in the next 5 years, a lot of the LPs, a lot of the investors of the VC funds would come from foreign countries as well. It might not come from the Malaysian market.
So just a follow-up question then. How do we create more VCs? Like, is that something the government has to push? Or, I mean, who's going to go to all these people or corporate and say, hey, you all need to start investing in startups? Like who's going to lead that? Any thoughts generally?
Yeah, I think it has to be top down. Government definitely has a huge role to play. If you look at Indonesia, if you look at Vietnam, if you look at Thailand as well, most of the CVCs were born because of the fact that, for example, it's a government initiative to push every single corporate to get into the investment mode. Even in Indonesia as well, as much as money came from the private sector, but it is President Jokowi, he himself, who go out there to propagate about startups. So a top-down approach would help a lot. I think for us, we are fortunate that we've been plagued by multiple issues at play, and hence there's too much distraction. But we do need a champion, and when I mean champion, just one champion to push the whole initiative. We can't have a few parties saying, spreading their own gospel, and at the end of the day, everyone starts getting diluted, and those initiatives would end up just for show and nothing else.
I think
with that. Sorry.
Ladies first, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Okay, now with respect to what Victor said, I just want to add that, if, say, for example, the government puts in money to make some investments, I think we need to have a clear objective, i.e., what's the purpose of the fund? Is it to develop the local startups or to develop the local VCs? If you want to develop the local startups, yes, government put in money, make sure that it's channeled towards the local startups. But if you want to develop the local VC, you can't put restrictions on, you can only in Malaysian startups, because the VC needs to make money. And, and we all know that until the ecosystem is developed enough where, so for example, you have certain funds, right? And you have a certain, IRR to target. So that's why I think when a funds is channeled, we need to have a clear objective. That's just what I want to add. Yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
It's okay.
No, good looks. Good looks first.
The young man.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, I also think this is a piece of the number of startups we have. So I know we talked about the 5,000 startups. I think the number is irrelevant, right? But I think the more important thing, we need to encourage the creation of more startups. We all know that this is a numbers game. Only 1% of every company will truly make it, and so really we're looking at a fraction of all the companies we have. If we're not creating enough early stage companies, these guys are not going to move forward the food chain and into the higher tiers of being able to receive more investment. Yeah. Why don't international VCs come to Malaysia and go to Singapore? Because they know Malaysia doesn't have a lot of startups. You probably have like maybe 200 really possibly investable startups today, out of which maybe only 30% will actually receive an investment, out of which, the numbers will go much further down. So like an international VC, the way they look at it is that if you're good enough, you'll come to Singapore anyway and see me. Yeah. Why should I open shop in Malaysia?
Exactly,
so I think,
exactly.
So it's economics, right? So one thing we should do is really encourage a lot more early stage intervention. We need, forgive the phrase, 1,000 bets, and maybe a couple of these guys may fail, but we need that because that's how you grow the ecosystem. And eventually the good ones will hire the guys that don't make it. And that's how the ecosystem is built. And that will encourage, I think, the VCs to come to the market and invest more in the local ecosystem because we have this pool of developing talent.
Correct. So to add to that, excellent point. So the numbers are important. It's a numbers game. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at 5,000, maybe 10,000 startups by 2025. And to Aaron's point, it is also about exits. The more exits you have in an ecosystem, the more money that's going to come back. Because these entrepreneurs will back with more money, and they're going to be starting to invest. They become mentors. They become investors. So this is the number of exits is so important for us, and so that's the other area you go. Again, I would say Aaron's example. He exited and he's now investing under ScaleUp. So that's exactly how the ecosystem evolves, right? So it's a numbers game. Unicorns not important.
More errands.
We got to create more errands. And I want to just Penjana Capital is a very good government initiative. I think we have 1.6 billion there, which is a good start for foreign VCs also are beginning to come in, which is a good start. Early days on how they're going to invest, early days and who they're going to invest in. So it's a place to watch.
All right. Okay. Actually, that brings me to the next question for Aaron, right? Because Aaron, you've seen good success as a great success, I would say, as a startup founder, and now you are helping other people to build their dreams. So, and you're running an accelerator yourself. So, how do you see accelerators and incubators playing a better role in creating more startups? I mean, I agree with you, right, with the whole idea of Malaysia needing more early stage startups. We need to really build the ecosystem from the ground up, and I feel incubators and accelerators can definitely play a greater role in that. So, any thoughts on that?
So I guess before I say I move forward, I think like one thing we need to acknowledge is that the Malaysian government has actually done a lot for the startup ecosystem, right? And I think that's the role of government. The government needs to be active where the private sector can't be because there's no commercial incentive to do so. So we've benefited a lot by the early stage grants that Cradle's provided, intervention by Mdh in the early days, work that Magic has done in the accelerator programs that they've run with Gap and all that. And I think that's really good. But now we're at the stage where there are people in the ecosystem who are developing these incubators and accelerators. I think from the accelerator space, I think what we need to encourage is a lot more public-private partnerships. We just announced a partnership with Magic this week, and we are looking to work with as many government agencies as we can because we think, look, we can only be successful if we do this together, right? And I think the next thing that needs to happen is we need more intervention in the early stage. So what we're looking for is more incubators, somebody to kind of help us with the company creation process, and maybe investing in the very early stage, like small ticket bets, 50,000 ringgit, 100,000 ringgit bets, because that's how you create those 1,000 small little startups that will come up through the funnel, what Rafiza is doing, what Gopi is doing, what we are doing at ScaleUp, and then eventually we'll go to Victor and he'll put in the big bucks in those companies.
He makes the money.
he makes the money for all of us. Yeah. So I think that's the key, right? We need to encourage a lot more early stage play, a lot more private-public partnerships. I think that's the way we can move forward and be successful together.
Just wanna share with you, and I when I was at Sandabi, Gopi, we attempted to do a lot of partnerships because like if startups partners with big corporates, with big governments, I think those are another area which we need to push for. Like what Aaron mentioned, there's just so much that the government can do. There needs to be a take up from the private sector, and this is where Cradle, we are really pushing for corporate, and this is also another initiative that we're working very closely with Mdh and which Gopi is leading, to create more partnership between corporates and startups and government and startups, because there's just so much that it's not done collectively.
Yeah, so I just want to add to what Rafiza said.
Sorry, guys. If I may add a few comments on the points that was just mentioned, right?
Please,
sorry, Gopi, if you don't mind, I'll just a few points before I pass it back to you. With regards to Aaron and Rafiza's points. So, kudos to the government for having Mdh, for having Cradle, having guys like Aaron to come up with accelerators to actually bolster the growth.
Victor, are you still there?
Yeah.
I think we lost you, Victor.
I'm back. Yeah. Yes, I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, kudos to the government for having Mdh, for having Cradle, and guys like Aaron to come up with initiatives for the very early stage of the ecosystem. There hasn't been much development over the years with regards to bridging the gap between the very early stage to the corporates, to the later stage investors. Because I think most likely than not, government or anyone at the public sector, they overlooked the fact that, for any startup ecosystem to work, you need people who can take the risks, who can actually be the babysitters to look after these small little companies that are still looking for resources to grow. And what that means is you need a lot more early stage investors who are willing to go out there to put money to work with early stage companies. But unfortunately, from what we have been seeing with regards to whatever has been happening, whether those are of good intention or those that are of bullshit, there hasn't been much focus on developing the local investors. Because most of the time, we think that foreign setups are much better than local setups. And because of that, we're inviting friends and guests from overseas to come over. But we got to remember, these are not here to stay. Yeah. They are here to make money. capitalists being capitalists, we are all trying to voucher for returns, for IRR. So when you have a lot of foreign investors who are coming in, once they see that they have depleted the potential returns from a market, they go back home. So who are the really genuine ones who are really putting in the heart and effort to the ecosystem? It depends on the local guys. But unfortunately, I don't think there's been enough initiative to support the local folks. There's been a lot of great professionals out there who's been trying to do good things, but unfortunately, a lot of them just hit a brick wall and decided to either give up or just become an entrepreneur to run a startup because it's much easier to get success out of that, or they just altogether move away from Malaysia to be a VC in Singapore or even Indonesia. So that's unfortunately, as much as we are trying to say that, okay, Malaysia is great, and because we are in a Malaysian conference, but there's not enough real work in developing the other key components of the startup ecosystem. And I don't think the government has been able to recognize that at this point of time.
Okay.
If I can add to that, I think I agree with you guys. I think the missing link right now in the ecosystem is in the corporate side of things. We have a lot of government intervention, which I think has done some work in the early days. But as I really think that we cannot continue with perpetual government intervention. I don't think that's healthy. And all we're doing is spoiling the companies that we have. We're making them entrepreneurs or overly dependent, right? We need them to move beyond that, right? I clearly benefited from a corporate partnership, but there are not enough corporations in Malaysia who see startups as potential partnerships. And I think that's one thing that we need a lot more intervention in, because that's kind of how you grow and how you build a good ecosystem. The question we get a lot when we talk to a lot of the early stage companies and a lot of the investors introduced to our companies is, okay, what happens now? How do these guys get an exit? The option cannot only be they need to IPO, because how many companies will be able to do that? Some of these guys will get acquired. Some of these guys may just be sustaining business for many years, but corporate path is something that's kind of missing from the overall story here. I think there's something that somebody needs to pick up and champion. Yeah.
So
Gopi,
Aaron,
with you.
Yeah, thanks. So Aaron, and to Rafiza's point just now, and that's what I was trying to come in for. A couple of years ago, yes, Rafiza and I spoke about when Mvca about corporate partnership. But I think the ecosystem wasn't ready. But today, we launched it last year while we were working from home. Mdh launched the corporate partnership program. What that merely is, exactly, Aaron, what you just said. You've got this big, heavy corporates who can't move agile. They have got issues. They have got problem statements, and they need the startups to come and address those problem statements. So Mdh saw the opportunity. So we created an initiative called Corporate Innovation Partnership, and during MCO, mind you, during last year when we were all working from home, we rolled out this initiative with the corporates. We got 70 corporates that signed up. The likes of ScaleUp, the likes of Maybank, the likes of Petronas, who signed up and shared their problem statement with us. And we have funneled over 1,000 companies, 1,000 startups, not unique, 1,000 different opportunities for these startups to go and resolve problems. And guess what? To Aaron's point, these corporates are now beginning to realize the power of the digital, power of startups, power of digital platforms. And there's adoption, there's POCs coming out, there's revenue, there's local market access. And we're coming to a point even there are beginning to have discussions on M&A, right? Where the corporates buying up. So this is the play that we thought about it 2 years ago, but I think ecosystem wasn't ready, but it is ready now. It is getting mature. It is moving fast. It's moving towards that. And to address that point that Aaron brought up, it is already starting, Aaron. So if you know of big companies who want to come and work with us, let us know.
Absolutely.
And we have the startups.
And you have the startups.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to another question for Ms. Rafiza here, right? So one of the issues recently we've been discussing a lot in the ecosystem, I think the general consensus is that early stage funding has dried up in the ecosystem. I think it was very active in the last few years, and then it kind of slowed down, especially during COVID. I mean, the big startups are raising money, they're growing big because they already at a point where they can scale up. But I think the early stage, everybody agrees that is, even people who are running accelerators and incubators are agreeing that, okay, early stage funding is pretty much inexistent in Malaysia. So Cradle has always been a champion in this space. But of course, in recent years, the programs like CIP 150 is no longer there, right? So what are your take on this? And do you think we still need a program like that, where someone can just walk up to Cradle with a PowerPoint and get their first 50 or 100,000 to kick off their startup? Or do you think that's not relevant anymore in this times?
No, I think grants are here to stay. course, and especially at the early stage. And not to say that the startups should rely 100% on the grant. The grant is just there, but we also need other investors as well. It's a chicken and egg. Look, when Cradle was first formed, it played because at that time no one knows what a startup is. When Cradle was first set up, and at that time the focus was very much on developmental role. So when we put we provide the grants, we want to develop the founders, less so, and we don't really look at, okay, are they going to be the next unicorn or what? But we're quite happy. We have MyTaxi as one of our recipients, yeah. But along the years, when people started to get to know, when we started to have angel investors, and this is something that which Cradle is also pushing for, and then we have some successful founders, the likes of our good friend here, who start to invest to new startups. Look, I've had conversations with a lot of angel investors who has the money, because now it is a recognized asset class investments, and people are sick and tired of putting money in properties because everyone lost a lot of money on property. They want to put on startups, they want to get 5 times, 10 times returns, but we don't, like you said, at an early stage, and this is where the likes of, like, for example, our partner Proficio needs to play a role, and Magic needs to play a role. We need to develop these people so that they are investable. I just give you an example. Last year, we funded 26 startups with our CIP and Accelerator. We had 467 who came to apply. Only 6% acceptance. Not to say that they're very bad startups, but they have good ideas, but they don't know how to pitch. They don't think about commercialization. Or we're not convinced that the team can execute. So these are the things. It's not just about the money, and that's why. And as you know, the next 2-3 years is still going to be tough for the Malaysians. So we can't see the number of government's money like 4-5 years ago. We need to be doing more than just giving money, and that's why for 2021. Our Cradle's focus, we set up a team called Ecosystem Development. We need to work very closely with our startups and to develop them so that, like Victor can do for the funding. So we need to provide the deal flow for, more established VCs, not just locally, international VCs. So these are some of the things we need. We need more of, the likes of Aaron to with us. We can provide the grant money, but we need them to grow these companies here.
Inba, I have something to add to Rafiza. I'm always adding something, but I have something to add. I think she brought up 2 fantastic points. One is the ability to sell your idea, the ability to... You see, there's money everywhere, money in Malaysia, money overseas. But we do not know how to tell our story, as Victor's point. So last year, Mdh launched the Founders Grindstone Initiative. What is it? It's about talking to these founders, making sure that they know how to pitch their idea, making sure they know how to talk to investors. What is your pitch document looking like? What do you say, what you don't say? What is your elevator pitch? What is your 5-minute pitch? What is your 1-hour pitch, right? So we went through that Founders Grindstone, and we partnered with Draper Startup House, which is, it's everyone knows Draper Startup House, right? And then we also got engaged with Chua from BFN, the morning grill guy. He grilled these guys. He grilled all of them really bad. But the result? During MCO, again, during work from home, the startups were choking. They needed oxygen. They needed money to survive. So Mdh rolled out 6 initiatives. Everything was online. And they covered debt, they covered equity, and covered alternate financing, right? We had more than 500 startups reaching back, and we were able to raise money for about 70 of them. Till to date, that funnel has raised 100 million US. Cap Bay was a startup that went through the Founders Grindstone. They raised the biggest Series A that FinTech saw in Malaysia, 20 million US. So I've always said there's entrepreneurship in Malaysia. Look at how Malaysia conquers ASEAN. Look at how the entrepreneurs conquer. Not like the US, it's one system, it's got 7-8 banking regulators they can conquer. So we got really good entrepreneurship, we got really good ideas, but we don't know how to talk, we don't know how to tell our story. And that is something I wanted to add what Rafiza said. That is something that we really, really need to focus on, not just as an ecosystem, but as a country.
I completely agree with that. I think like one of the challenges we have, got great entrepreneurs, and even the guys at the early stage are quite resourceful, they're quite resilient. And like when we started ScaleUp Malaysia, the reason we did it was we felt that there's a need for intervention after that point, right? Because we see that when a Malaysian startup founder goes out of Malaysia's borders and can show some success, investors are immediately interested because you've shown you're not a one-trick pony, and you said you can operate already in a multicultural society, therefore you can build a regional business. So we think that's one of the very important things. But the truth is right now, if you try to raise money as a Malaysian company right now, because you're branded Malaysian, it doesn't always give you the best return when you go out there. So we need to work on this, help the companies, kind of help them develop their pitches, their storytelling, construct their business in the right way so that they can go beyond our borders and become successful.
Okay, guys, let's take some questions from the audience. We have people putting in questions, but make it a lightning round. So keep your answers short and sweet so we can cover more questions. One very general question, right, from Dave. Would it be more efficient to consolidate Cradle, Mdh, and Magic under one entity? I've heard this spoken many times in our ecosystem. People have been discussing, hey, why doesn't this happen? What do you guys think? Quickly.
I think we're already working very closely together.
Yeah.
And I think we are now holding hands, in fact, in many of the initiatives. With the Mosty, KKMM, Magic, Cradle, Mvca, Mdh, we're all working very closely and we're meeting very often.
Okay, I just want to add to that. Each of these agencies, they have a niche role to play. There are pros and cons about consolidating everything. And I look at a model, say, for example, a conglomerate. There were a point in time, becoming a conglomerate is the popular thing because, conglomerate, does, 20 different industries or whatever from stream all the way to downstream. And then after that, everyone started to break because, and the reason why that business model is because each player should play a role because, like, for example, Cradle, the thing is we're under Mosty, right? And Ministry of Science Technology, they have what we call it the big picture of how they do want to develop the startup ecosystem. At the moment, like what Gopi said, we work very closely together. Like we have a group chat with all the agencies. We're trying as much as possible not to have overlap roles, and now we're working very closely. Like whenever we do our speaking engagement, I'm constantly talking about all the other agencies, and which I may not be in that area, but when I was on the other side of the the fence. I didn't see that way, but like what said, is there a need? Yes, that's like I said, that's pros and cons. I don't have the the magic answer to that. Yeah.
Okay, next question.
If I can add just to that, unless Victor wants to comment on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
If I can add,
Good to hear non-government agencies speaking on this one.
Yes.
that's why I thought I'd just chime in. And I guess having been on the other side for a short while. One thing I learned is that when you create anything government, when you switch it on, it's very hard to switch anything off because things are moving. There's a whole bunch of other considerations at play. But what I can suggest, and I hope like the powers that be may consider, is a lot more clarity. So maybe there's a need for some sort of consolidation in terms of like one website where a startup founder can go.
Yeah.
Because like one question I ask a lot of early founders, if you were to start your startup today, where do you go first? And most of them don't know. Or they just randomly think of the first thing that comes to their head. So maybe there's a need for like one giant website where all the services are, regardless of which agency, and then people can know what information from. I think it's not a question of who does what. It's a question of clarity. So if you can help the clarity, I think it's much better for everyone. Yeah.
I think earlier I mentioned about this. I think we need an ecosystem map to show who are the players in which role. I mean, it'll be good to also know, right, what Mdh really do, what they're supposed to do, what is Cradle supposed to do. I mean, some of us know because we've been seeing them for the last 20 years, but the young ones coming up, they may not realize, right?
We learn through osmosis, right? That's how we learn.
What Magic is supposed to do. And sometimes people are confused. Hey, Magic and Cradle, Magic and Mdh, they're both working with startups. Are they supposed to compete with each other? So things like that. So it'll definitely be, it's great to have clarity with a proper ecosystem map. I hope someone will work on that. That'll be interesting to see. Okay, there's another question.
Sorry, can I just add on to one more point from there? Again, from another private sector guy. It's simple. I'm not gonna be very deep on that. So just one analogy. As a founder, as a SME business owner, would you rather talk to 5 people who can give you 5 different options to support you, or you want to talk to just one guy? It's either a yes or no, whether they can give you something. So I think I'll leave it to everyone to think about that. So as simple as that.
All right. So I think that's something for the blueprint people to look. Okay. Victor, there's a question from Angel. What is Mvca doing to increase local capital? I guess she's referring to the Malaysian Venture Capital Association.
Yeah. Well, we are doing a lot more on the educational and awareness. Those are the work that we are doing right now. Because Mvca on our own, our influence is very limited. Especially we are formed by industry players who are actively running our business as well. We are not government. We don't have huge funding. We don't have huge support. We are just an industry voice. So the role that we are playing right now is more of creating the knowledge capital, creating the awareness to encourage and to allow for more entrepreneurs and even investor wannabe to learn about the asset class, so that when conversations happen, it's going to be much more efficient and there's less wastage. So that's the main thing that we're trying to do, and hopefully along the way we can actually encourage more private family offices or more creation of VCs as well. But again, our influence is very limited, given that all of us, all the members, are actually full-time on our own bread and butter. And Mvca is an initiative, but we still need a lot more support.
All right. Okay, there's an interesting question here from Mark Cross-Smith. What do you consider a Malaysian startup? One incorporated in Malaysia or one based in Malaysia, but is incorporated somewhere else like Singapore or Hong Kong? Because he says, for me, I see zero benefit in incorporating in Malaysia when SG is an option. So who wants to take this?
I'm going to go first. Right? I'm going to go first just to avoid any. Let Gopi and Rafiza straddle this later. So from my standpoint, right, as a private sector person, and I guess now as we're investing in companies through ScaleUp, right, it is less important to us where the company comes from, because it's a startup. Even though we're called ScaleUp Malaysia, we have had founders who are not actually from Malaysia. We've invested in, and we've had actually companies with holding companies in Singapore we invest in as well. So for us, it's not really that important as to whether or not they're a Malaysian company or non-Malaysian company. But I guess if I take a step back from a nationalistic standpoint, to me, what's more important is that the economic activity is happening in Malaysia. And that means people are getting jobs in Malaysia, innovation is happening in Malaysia, talent is being developed in Malaysia. That, I think, is more important to me, rather than where a company calls their HQ home, right? So Grab, for example, there's some tax being paid. But Grab has most of their companies, most of their staff here in Malaysia. They got a huge talent pool here. We don't talk about it, but for all intents and purposes, they've got a house in Singapore, but home is in Malaysia for most of these companies.
No, I completely I agree with Aaron. When we talk about some of the big startups, foreign startups, does it matter as one person? Of course, if your government you want to capture all of this, but at the end of the day, where do they generate the value? Where do they generate the wealth? Is it in that country? I think that's where we should focus. There's no point a startup having incorporated in Malaysia, but do their value creation elsewhere. So what's in for Malaysia? And I much rather have someone who's incorporated somewhere, but like what Aaron said, the generation of activity, benefits, job creation, wealth creation, everything is in this country, or bring back to the country. Yeah.
So I echo what Rafiza and Aaron saying. I just want to add that it's about job creation. It's about where is your, you could be headquartered in Singapore, but if you're operating in your operating headquarters is in KL or Malaysia, you're creating jobs here, you're spending here, you're building your office here. You're raising it in Singapore, but you're spending it in Malaysia. It goes back into the Malaysian economy. So it doesn't matter where it's your headquarters, because it's a borderless world today. You can put it anywhere. But where is your core operation? And where are you creating a job? Is what's most important.
All right. Okay, there's another question here about how big companies are always looking at partners who have good track records. So Alauddin is asking how best can VCs help those big guys to explore collaboration with startups. Actually, I can answer this quickly. From my experience, I mean, I run a lot of corporate innovation programs as well. One of it is JomHack Malaysia. We run a lot of hackathons for our government agency partners and also corporates, right? And what we do through that opportunities, because I mean, as a company, when you approach a corporate, it may be difficult. I don't think you can easily get through the doors. But when we work with our corporate partners, part of the follow-up program for a hackathon, for example, is to get those winning ideas, those talents through the door, right? So now the top 10 ideas or the top 3 ideas from a hackathon gets directly with a corporate partner, who otherwise you probably won't even get through the door at the entrance, right? Now you get to sit in front of the CEO and discuss potential collaboration or a pilot project. So those are the kind of programs that happens in Malaysia. So, and not only me, a lot of people, our friends in the ecosystem, even like Aaron here and Victor, we're always doing things. Victor's also coming up with a hackathon soon, WinHack, right? Happening soon. Yeah, so a lot of programs are happening, not only on the government side, on the private side as well. I would urge you guys to kind of look out for these things. Of course, it's on social media, it's everywhere, I mailing lists, but sometimes it's also hard for us to reach out everybody. I mean, for someone like me, I don't have the resources that maybe Mdh or Magic or Cradle might have, right? But we try our best to do these programs and reach out to our entrepreneur ecosystem to create these opportunities. So do look out for those things. Personally, if you're a techie, a coder, JomHack is a great platform. Do check it out on Facebook. You can find us and things like that. And I'm sure from the government side as well, I think Mdh does a lot of program with corporate partners as well, right? Anything you want to add on that, Gopi?
No, I think you said it all. We open into a corporate partnership. So yeah, thanks. You said it very well.
I think now, recently with the whole buzz with corporate innovation, I think a lot of corporates are a bit more open with the idea of working with startups, working with even freelancers or individuals. I think they're a bit more focused on getting real talent and innovation. So yeah, you guys look at it. I mean, today we have RHB Bank with us. The head of innovation of RHB Bank just gave a keynote earlier. And they're very interested to now start working with startups and our local tech people. Actually, we are planning a hackathon soon with RHB Bank. And
we get a lot of corporates approaching Cradle for source of startup. So we're seeing a lot more now compared to before. Yeah,
and that's a good trend, right? I mean, I'm very happy with that trend. I think like 5 years ago, it was a bit harder, right? For community builders like us to approach corporates to say, hey, let's do some work with startups. They're like not interested. Now they're coming to us. And
I think the traction has picked up. Hong Kong's working with Mdh. They had a hackathon. First price was 50,000, and third 25, plus they give you market access straight away, one opportunity. So you see, it's changing.
I ran that hackathon.
There you go.
Yeah, so
looks like the ecosystem stakeholders are all the same everywhere.
So, I mean, Hong Kong been very great in that sense. I mean, we've done 3 hackathons with them every year. We are working on the next 4th one in June, which is going to be a regional one for 5 countries. And they are very excited to work with startups, right? They even set up a whole floor in their HQ, a center to sit and engage startups. So corporates are coming on board. So, I mean, if you guys are finding corporates who are not interested, ignore them. Look out for those who are interested, right? And excited to work with startups.
They won't be disrupted.
And don't be discouraged. I think I see a lot of positive ecosystem with the government side, the private sector side, ecosystem builders, even small community builders like me. I think we're all trying to play our part. So hopefully you guys can grab onto those opportunities, right? All right. So I think with that, any other last points? We're at the end of the. Anything you guys want to say before we wrap up?
I just want to tell the industry that Mdh has reinvented, and we are now more focused, sharper. So earlier it was dispersed. So we've narrowed it down to its talent, its businesses, its investment. And we brought all our websites together to one. So it's www.mdh.my. And all our initiatives are all there. It's a process that it's driving the website. So you don't need to know anyone special yet. You just need to get into that website, look at what you want, whether it's a grant, whether it's scaling up, whether it's gain, whether it's talent, and click on that initiative, and you will be connected. Yeah. And thank you, KLSS, for having me on this panel.
Thank you for being here. Rafiza, anything you want to add from Cradle side?
No, we're all good. Thank you very much.
Right, guys. Do check out Cradle's website for all their programs.
Yeah.
And Aaron with ScaleUp, they're doing great work. They're investing a lot in startups. Do check out ScaleUp and Vynn Capital as well from Victor. Right. So with that, thank you so much, guys, for joining us today and taking time out of your Saturday afternoon. It's been a great.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thank you.
And to the audience, thank you so much. Tune in to the next session. We have another panel on Vynn Tech. That's going to be a great session as well. So tune in. Once we are done with this, immediately we'll go on to the next panel session. Okay, guys, take care.